This is the Sailing Podcast with David and Karina Anderson, episode number 70. We would love you to support us on Patreon. Just visit www.patreon.com/sailing. Hello again, it's David Anderson here, and thank you for joining me for, I think, the 15th take of the introduction for episode 70 of the Sailing Podcast. Now, today's interview, it's with Karen and Dan. They spoke to me, they were in North Carolina at the time while cruising the yacht Minke down the Intra-coastal Waterway on their way south to the tropics. Now, Minke's a 35-foot steel yacht. They bought it earlier this year in Canada, and we hear a little bit about, first of all, their rationale for searching for a steel yacht, as well as some of the challenges they had changing Minke from being registered in Canada to actually being a yacht registered in the US. During the interview, we also hear a lot about their past experiences. They've had just amazing times. They've been working in Antarctica, and then they were working on a contract in the Marshall Islands. And they chat about how then their dream to go sailing came about. Now, once they did get underway, not everything's gone to plan. Unfortunately, they had a broken diesel engine along the way, which led them to replacing it with an electric hybrid setup. And so Karen and Dan chatted through sort of how they decided to switch to electric hybrid, how the changeover occurred, what some of the costs were, and they also let us know how the system's going. Now, you can follow along with their journey. They've got a blog. It's called the Odyssey of Minke. I'll post a link to their blog along with my show notes. It'll all be at thesailingpodcast.com/70. And now, here's the interview. Well, hi, Dan. Hi, Karen. How are you guys going today?
Good. How are you?
Yeah. Very good.
I'm terrific. I think this will be really interesting. You guys contacted me, or Karen sent me a message on Facebook, just chatting a little bit about what your travels have been, and that you mentioned the fact that you'd decided to change from a diesel engine across to an electric engine in your yacht. And I guess you picked up, I chatted before about how that sort of interests me. So you said, you'd be happy to share some of that story. So I think that'll be a really interesting topic. But then I started looking at your blog, and I found out that you guys are actually really interesting people as well. And maybe we shouldn't talk too much about electric and diesel motors. Maybe we should find out a little bit about you guys, because it sounds like you've got really interesting backgrounds, and you're off on a new adventure now, which is on a yacht.
Yes, yeah.
Just a minute ago, we were just setting up for the recording and things, and you guys just sort of dropped in that you actually met in Antarctica. Well, that's amazing. Tell me quickly, why were you in Antarctica?
In 2004, my story is separate from Dan's. I was living in Denver and decided to go to their pretty much a job interview network thing, and I received a job through the network, and I went down to Antarctica, and I was a dispatcher for the firehouse. I started out as that, and did that for a season and met Dan down there. And the following season came back working in hazardous waste disposal. And and then we decided to hang out a little bit.
Yeah, and I ended up going down there. I just graduated from university and didn't know really what I wanted to do. My mom's a science teacher, and she met this woman who was looking for interns to go to Antarctica. And I went down as the lowest paid person on the station, cleaning boilers for the first trip, and then kept going back as a mechanic after that.
Oh, okay. But then you just said you were studying at university. What did you study?
I studied industrial technology.
Okay. Oh, wow. And so how much time in total did you spend in Antarctica? Dan, what about you first?
Off and on. The longest stint we did was 14 months straight through, but usually it was like 4 to 5 months, and we did 8 contracts.
Yeah, we did the same amount of time.
Okay. Yeah, wow, that's an amazing time. I mean, you guys must sort of like the cold weather.
Gotten used to it. It's tolerable, I guess, but warm weather is much more enjoyable. After 2 years in our last job, we've gotten used to that now. I think our blood's gotten a little thin.
Yeah. Yeah, McMurdo Station's where we started. We started at McMurdo Station, the main campus, and we also went to Palmer Station and took a short trip to South Pole for separate, different jobs. So we were able to see all the stations. It's amazing science projects that are going on down there, and it's really neat to be able to support the science that's going on as well.
Oh, that's great. So I guess you would have gotten a chance, you just said, to go to the South Pole. You would have seen so many projects coming and going. But then I also read just before you've taken off on your sailing trip, you were doing another sort of posting or contract work, and that was out, I jotted it down somewhere, it was in the Marshall Islands. I was trying to think of what the atoll was.
Kwajalein.
And what was going on there? Because I had to Google that. I was chatting to Karina about talking to you guys today, so we jumped on Google Maps and we just found this little dot out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, the U.S. military maintains a base out there, and we were working as contractors for the Army. And I worked at the water plant, making drinking water and then also dealing with wastewater treatment. And then Karen was...
Yeah, I did environmental research for the Army as well, doing pretty much looking over their hazardous waste and their hazardous product stream in each different job areas to make sure that they labeled them correctly and everything was safe.
Label them correctly before they throw it overboard into the ocean?
Yeah, exactly.
No! The Army's gotten much better. They aren't as bad as they used to be.
That's good. When I did look up the atoll, I'm not going to try that to say the name, Kwajalein, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And on Google it says it's got amazing diving, apparently. It said great location for diving, lots of maritime wrecks. Are you guys divers? Was that one of the bonuses of being there?
We are now, yes. We weren't when we arrived there, and we took a diving course and got certified and did all the way to the advanced open water?
Yes.
I think that's the one we ended up stopping at. We didn't go to the rescue diver. But the scuba club there is basically everybody at Kwajalein working for the military. And there's so many divers. It was the cheapest place in the world to dive. We could do as many dives as we wanted for the whole year for $140. So it was just go to the tank house and grab a tank and then go walk off the beach and go for a dive after work. It was amazing.
Oh, that just sounds awesome. And the water temperature, because it looks like it's sort of, must be almost on the equator. Is that right?
It was pretty close. I think we were 8 degrees north. And what was it, about 70?
Oh, no, 82 degrees.
82 degrees for the water temperature, yeah.
Wow. No, that's amazing. Is any general public allowed to go there, or is it military only?
It's military only, but you can find somebody to sponsor you, and that's how visitors can go there sometimes. Cruising yachts that showed up, they would always send out an email from the yacht club. We were members, and we still are members of the Kwajalein Yacht Club, and they would ask for people that were working there to sponsor so they could come on and go shopping and see the island. And it happened a few times while we were there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. I should have asked you about what happens to cruising yachts, considering it's a sailing podcast. But that's interesting. So your advice is, if anybody's wanting to stop at the Marshall Islands and they're cruising, say they're trying to go Hawaii across and sort of go that direction, they can actually try and track down somebody who lives on the base, and then they just need them to sponsor them, and then they're allowed to potentially come in and...
Notice.
How much notice?
Probably a couple weeks would work. Usually there's some paperwork that has to be filed and find someone that would be willing to give up, because each person gets a certain amount of time to sponsor visitors.
Yeah, okay. And so so let's go back to the sailing side of things. So you're in Antarctica. Are you dreaming of sailing while you're in Antarctica? Or are you sort of getting addicted to the diving and seeing the water once you're in the atoll? Is there a sort of a point where somebody looked at the other person and said, I've been thinking about buying a yacht?
Probably in the middle of the winter in Antarctica. We were part of the Ross Island Yacht Club down there, which was basically a group from Scott base, the New Zealand base, would come over, and we would sit around and watch sailing videos and talk about going sailing and trips that people had taken in the middle of the winter in Antarctica, dreaming about warm places.
You're right. Can I get a T-shirt for the Ross? What was it? The Ross
Ross Island Yacht Club.
Yacht Club?
Yeah, we have a burgee, but we don't have a T-shirt.
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty popular.
Yeah.
It's got a man-haul sledging from Scott's expedition on the burgee.
Great. Well, I mean, there's some great sailors. Obviously, have a point of contact through to Antarctica. So you were talking down there. You've sort of had a few Kiwis sharing a few stories, and did that really plant the seed for looking at that as another adventure?
It did, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I have a problem with being a gypsy, basically living a gypsy life, and deciding on where to live is difficult. And being able to move with all of your things was the next best thing. And so being able to live on the boat and explore different areas and not have to sit in one spot was very intriguing.
And for me, I took a sailing course after my first trip to Antarctica. I went to Australia and went to the Wet Sundays and did a live-aboard sailing course there. And that just opened up my eyes and showed me how much you can do from a sailboat.
Oh, that's great. So you've been in my backyard, basically.
Yes.
That's great. And because I think your story is really interesting and we're sort of progressing through where it started from. You guys are a pretty recent liveaboard, so it's interesting to hear a little bit of the background and sort of how you achieved that goal. I think it helps inspire people as they're listening along. Maybe we've got somebody's planted that seed in their mind, and then to sort of walk through the steps that it's taken to get to living aboard. So you've sort of had the idea, you're a bit interested in sailing, so you do a sailing course. Karen, did you feel the need to go and do some training of some sort?
Yeah, I wasn't. We actually before the contract for Kwajalein, we almost bought a 40-foot Cartright Cutter boat, but it was just way too big and things happened, and so we let that go. And I said, after that experience, that learning how to sail would be I think something that would help me feel a little more secure and get a little more experience. So we went down to San Diego, and we took the course with the San Diego Sailing organization. ASA, and it was a great course. They did a great job. We were on a boat for almost five days, and told us all the ins and outs of everything. And the wind down there is pretty intense by the bridge, the San Diego Bridge. So I got to experience some pretty intense wind coming off the island and the bridge. And again, great experience. And then from there, I think we went back to work in Antarctica and then Kwajalein. And then we got really serious about buying a sailboat again, and I felt a little more comfortable about the whole idea. And so we again went forward, and basically after researching online for steel boats, we found 3 over the year when we were in Kwajalein. And we just basically packed my little Honda Civic with everything that we owned and hit the road.
Could you really fit everything you own in a Honda Civic?
It took 2 trips.
Okay. That's pretty good though, because actually, like yesterday, Karina and I, we started cleaning out our garage. I mean, we've been in the house now for 12 years, and oh my God, I can't believe how much rubbish I've collected over that time. So if you can travel light and fit it all in a couple of loads of a Honda Civic, that's going to make life much easier when you're transitioning to a boat. Now, just jumping back, you mentioned there you found 3 different steel yachts. Why were you only looking at the steel yachts?
When we were in the Marshall Islands, there was quite a few yachts. People who sailed out there, sometimes if they're American citizens, they find a job and they stay, or there's been yachts that have been brought out, and they're moored right next to the island. And we had a different wind direction for a few weeks, and it ended up blowing across the lagoon for probably 3 weeks. And normally that's not the prevailing wind, and everybody's mooring was tested. And the wind came up to about 25 to 30 knots, and a couple boats broke loose. And there was a Swan 40 and a Choili 42 that broke loose. One was Casa Chica was the one that the Swan, and she came on the rocks first, and then the Choili banged into her, and they were both holed. to watch, pretty reputable boats just be smashed to bits and fiberglass sticks in less than probably 2 hours was just made our mind up that we were looking for something more durable. This is our first boat and it's home for us. So we wanted something that if that did happen, it might be able to be repaired a little easier.
Yeah, wow, that must have been just devastating. So were the owners around, or do you think that they were off the island and that's why
the owners for one of them? Yeah, owners for one of them was there, and they were actually, watching it crash onto the shore. It was heartbreaking because that was their house before they came to Kwajalein. They actually were living aboard, and then the other one was being tended to by someone else, and they had left and found another job somewhere and left their boat behind. And I think it was up for sale, but it was a complete write-off after that.
Yeah, wow. Okay, that makes sense. Just you mentioned the design before, because you said you were looking at a 40-foot Cartright Cutter, and is it right, the one you've got now is a 36-foot Cartright Cutter?
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't really on purpose. It was just happened to be that she was the steel yacht that was in our price range, and she passed the survey okay, no problems really, except for we didn't know the engine was going to break after 60 hours of running her.
Yeah.
But she fit the bill and draft and dimensions that we were looking for, so we went ahead and made an offer, and they took it, which was surprising at first.
Yeah.
Do you wish you offered less now?
We did offer less, and we kind of creeped up on the price a couple times, and I should have stuck with the lower price, but that's okay.
Yeah. Wow. Where was the boat?
It was in Lake Ontario, near Kingston.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to sort of make it sound like I know where that is. Lake Ontario, right. But so it's in Canada somewhere.
It's in Canada.
Did you look at a few boats? Did you end up looking at all those, say you found those three that you were interested in? Did you get a chance to look at all three, or did you sort of end up just shopping online and deciding that was the best of the three?
No, we loaded the Honda Civic and went and kicked the tires on everything. So it was a big round the U.S. road trip. We drove from California all the way across to Alabama and Florida, and then up to Canada to look at a couple boats up there. So we had looked at quite a few boats. We were looking at fiberglass boats before we went to the Marshall Islands and saw those break up. So we had an idea of about the size that we were looking for, that our stuff would fit in and what would be comfortable for us. And we kind of narrowed it down to below 38 feet to 33 feet. And we were sticking with, we wanted to be able to do the ICW and have the draft shallow enough to go into some, gunk holing, do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Because I didn't mention that at the start. I usually try and drop a little message about where you are at the moment. You just mentioned there the ICW, because I'm looking at a map on your site. It looks like you're maybe in Portsmouth at the south end of the Chesapeake Bay. Is that right?
We've moved on from there. That was, I think, the last time we got to post. But now we are in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So Belhaven, North Carolina, just north of Oriental.
I guess you've been on board and live aboard since you must have, we sort of skipped a piece of the story. So you bought the yacht. That was successful. You sort of, I guess, finished contracts. So then you move aboard. But you guys, I didn't ask you exactly where you're from, because Karen, you said you're from, you were in Denver. Was that home for you?
No, I'm originally from Ohio, and Dan's from California.
Okay, so you're U.S. citizens, and then you buy the boat in Canada. Is that the boat's registered in Canada? Is there any problem bringing it back home? I mean, why would you change? Would you change the registration papers on it, or is it not important?
Yes, it's very important. We had to change from Canadian registry to U.S. Coast Guard, because we are eventually planning on heading over to the Azores, over to Europe, and exploring that area. So we wanted U.S. Coast Guard documented. And it ended up being a very difficult process. We were surprised. We thought we just had to fill out a form online and send in that we were the new owners, because our broker for the boat said, I'll take care of the paperwork for you, and you just have to, sit tight and wait for me to respond and say that I delisted it with the sellers. so we could relist it with the U.S. Coast Guard because it can't be in two names at the same time.
Right.
So I put in the paperwork and sent it in, and I think it was 3 months later, the Coast Guard denied our documented paperwork. And after speaking with them 4 or 5 times on the phone, I came to realize that the buyers or the sellers of our boat did not have the name in their, or have the boat in their name. So
Right.
there was this confusion that the delisting originally had our name on it, saying Karen Seamus and Dan Seamus are delisting the boat, as if we had previously owned it, not the other owners. So it was super confusing.
And the Coast Guard thought that we had owned the boat in Canada and deregistered or delisted it from Canadian registry. And
Yeah, so they
We're
were
trying
wondering
to-
why we were registering it with the U.S. Coast Guard if we're Canadian citizens.
Okay.
So I had to clear up that whole thing that we were the new owners.
and we're
And-
U.S. citizens.
We're U.S. citizens. And long story short, after I would say about 4 or 5 phone calls, I cleared it up with them, and we finally registered the boat after about 5 months.
5 months. Wow. But
Yeah.
where were you during all that time?
Well, we were sailing. We started.
Oh, you're already
we
on the boat, and still trying to
Yeah.
sort it out.
yes.
Which was really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wi-Fi is not always available.
Was it May?
Yeah, we,
We
purchased
bought-
the boat in May,
Yeah.
and it was just like, what,
July,
last month or a month
August.
and a half ago? We finally got the papers.
Yes. Yeah.
So 4.5 months.
Four
or
and a
so.
half months. Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah. We were dealing with this in Saint Mattia in Canada,
In Quebec.
in Quebec. So we had to borrow phones, and yeah, it was crazy. But
Right.
she's registered U.S. Coast Guard, so.
So do you think that situation, do you think it was like an exception to the rule, that yours was particularly hard, or does everybody find that that's a bit of a challenge?
I think it was kind of an exception since our boat isn't normal. Like a fiberglass boat, they have a hull number, and it's been, from a production facility where they have documentation. But since she was basically a home-built steel yacht from the plans that they had, she doesn't have a hull number. She didn't have any sort of like Canadian title paperwork that we could show to the Coast Guard to tell them where she came from.
All right. Earlier I'd asked you about it was being a Cartright Cutter. So that means it's not a production boat. Cartright Cutter is just like somebody, Mr. Cartwright. Is he selling plans to build this design of yacht?
Yeah, Jerry Cartwright was the designer. He had a fiberglass boat. I believe that they did produce some of them. It was a 36-foot, and that's what our design was based on. They took that fiberglass boat and turned her into a steel yacht.
Okay. How old is your yacht?
1995 is when she was built.
Okay. That's not that long ago, really, is it? Even for...
Not too long. Yeah, she didn't have very much rust. She's been in fresh water her whole life, and now that we've brought her into the salt water, we found all these spots that were not painted so diligently before, but we've got lots of maintenance work to keep up on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's the thing with, I think with like those, I'm sure, I don't know if I've mentioned on the podcast or somebody else told me, I mean, those big steel cargo ships that just sail around on the ocean all the time, I think they just get constantly painted. It's just the way to do it. It's just to keep the layers of paint on to stop the water getting into the metal.
Right, just keep going around her.
Yeah. So you get the boat, and when I looked on I think I've talked to other people who've done this trip heading from Canada, and I just think it would be a really cool trip to do, and especially as being new on your boat, to do that sort of Intra-coastal Waterway and down through the locks. Just quickly describe, because I saw you, I saw pictures, mast down, and you're going through locks, which I guess is sort of that area heading from Canada down to New York. Is that correct?
Right. We took the St. Lawrence Seaway from Lake Ontario. So we went out into the St. Lawrence, and we had some locks along there to get to Montreal. And then we went past Montreal to Sorel, and took our mast down and laid it on the deck to go down the Richelieu River and the Chambly Canal.
Yeah. Sorry.
That takes us down and into Lake Champlain. So we ended up in crossing the border then into Lake Champlain at New York.
Right. And is that where the mast goes back up?
No, we actually had to go across Lake Champlain with the mast down, and then we put it up in the Hudson River after we finished the Hudson Canal.
Okay, so Hudson River, sorry about my geography, Hudson River, that's the one that takes you into New York?
Yes, it does. It takes you right down to New York City.
Yeah, I should know that. I was in that mainly because that plane landed on it not that long ago. I think they made a movie about that. It's meant to be pretty good. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Tom Hanks, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I saw the ads for Tom Hanks being in it. I like Tom Hanks. He's a good actor. So,
yes.
and so I guess going back to that, you've gone through those locks. Looks like really, really interesting traveling. And at what point did you start having some engine problems? Because that sort of brings us back to part of the reason I was interested in what you'd had to do, because at some stage your diesel engine threw in the towel.
Yes, it quit on us. We did it 100% too, and we did finish it off. But it was the day after we took our mast down. As we took the mast down ourselves at the Sorel Marina, I said, "Oh, everything will be great as long as the diesel engine keeps running. We'll make it to New York in no time." And the next day, we heard a loud crashing, banging, rattling noise, and I went down, and we were 14 miles into the Richelieu River at that point, and opened the hatch up to look at the front of the Perkins engine, and the pulley on the front of the crankshaft was bouncing up and down and rattling. And Perkins kind of rattled to start, but it was a lot more rattling than normal. So we shut it off and dropped the anchor and called the Canadian Coast Guard and said, "We are having engine trouble." And they came to look at us in a little tiny boat and saw how big we were and said, "Well, we can't help you. Right. So stay here for the night and we'll arrange for the marina to come and tow you." And that's basically where all of our we got stuck there for a month and a half repowering. All our decisions were made to repower in that marina because they couldn't really service us since our draft was too deep to get the boat hauled out, and they didn't have a crane that could reach us. We had to come up with a solution in light enough pieces where I could take everything out of the boat and install a new system. So we came up with an electric hybrid system to meet those requirements.
Right. Dan, I just have to ask you, just to clarify this, because didn't you earlier say you were in charge of engine maintenance and things like that when you were in Antarctica? Was this your responsibility to keep that motor running?
That was my responsibility. There was oil in the crankcase, and she was running great until she didn't anymore. And the problem I found, because I'd completely disassembled the engine once we figured out that it wasn't the injectors, and the main problem was something major, because we replaced injectors and tried to take off, and we made it about a mile away from the marina, and the engine just completely stopped, and the crankshaft broke in two pieces and came through the side of the block.
What?
So that finished it off for me.
Wow, that's amazing. And what did you? So then, when you pulled it apart, what was the end diagnosis?
The bearings were actually all okay. I didn't find any bearing wear except for that front spot where the pulley that drives the injection pump, their gear there had sheared off and was kind of like jumping against the crankshaft, and it had sheared somehow at the front of the crankshaft.
Okay. Right. Okay. So we're all agreed it was your fault.
It was my fault. Yeah. The mechanic of the boat, definitely my fault.
Yeah. No, these things happen. I mean, you don't expect it to happen with a diesel. Probably one of the things lower on the list.
Yeah, especially with 700 hours on it. It only had 794 hours when it came to a complete abrupt stop.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you've investigated converting to like a hybrid electric motor, because is a decision based on the fact that you're in a difficult place to get the boat out of the water, or do you sort of have a like an environmental issue with the diesels, and did that sort of influence the decision as well?
It was also environmental, yeah. to be able to have less of a footprint is always good, because we have seen global warming firsthand happening. In Antarctica, working at some of those stations, you can see glaciers receding 30 feet a year.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. And we've done work when we were in Greenland for the winter on some research projects that were looking at how the ice cap is changing, and we've seen the effects of what man is doing to the planet.
Yeah.
So smaller footprint is always better.
Right.
Definitely.
Right. So you can convert to the electric with the goal of having enough solar power to keep the batteries running?
No, we still are relying on diesel, but not as much. So eventually we will have some solar panels to keep the batteries. But right now we have a diesel generator we've installed that powers us when we can't get to a marina to recharge. So we use shore power to recharge if we can, but the rest of the time we can run the small diesel generator and charge back up and actually run almost indefinite.
Right. And so tell me a bit about your engine research. I mean, were there many options? How did you find something suitable for, I guess, you've got this existing setup with your prop shaft and all that junk. How do you match it when you go to engine shopping?
Yeah, we just a flurry of emails out to every electric motor company out there that we could find online. And we knew we were strapped with time because the lock systems in Canada begin to close about mid-October. So we broke down in the end of September.
It was August, I think.
It was August.
End of August.
And so we didn't have much time. So we just, again, flurry of emails, and it was amazing. This one woman, Nancy Frenetti from Electric Marina in Florida, contacted us, who she is a broker basically for electric yachts. And she just started crunching numbers like crazy for us. And within a week, after basically talking with us every day, she had stuff just moving along. And that's what we needed. We needed someone to really not basically take our hand. We kind of knew what we wanted, but we weren't sure what could power us enough.
Yeah, since we're a steel yacht, we're heavier than most. For a 36-foot boat, we weigh 24,000 pounds without all our stuff in it. And then we're probably getting closer to 30,000 pounds now with everything we've added in. And to make sure that we'd have enough power to move us, if we were on a lee shore or something, we wanted to try to get some numbers to match prop sizes and pitches and figure out, how many kilowatts of electric power we needed versus, we had a 50 horsepower diesel. What's comparable with an electric conversion? And they had a system that fit really well with what size we had before.
And so I was just about to ask you what horsepower was originally on the boat. So it's a 50 horsepower. And I don't know if you said it or whether I read it. I wrote down you had what is the kilowatts of the motor? I didn't write that down.
We have two 10 kilowatts running together, so we have 20 kilowatt total.
And do you think that that's more, less, or the same as 50 horsepower diesel?
I feel like we have more than our broken Perkins had before.
I guess that's what we have to base it on.
Yeah, because the engine must not have been in the best condition. And so I'm guessing that we weren't getting all of that 50 horsepower, because the torque curve on the diesel, we would have to be at full revs to get that 50 horsepower, and we were running way lower than that all the time.
So the people, this lady, great, she's helping you out with with sort of sourcing out the motors. And did she then walk you through the process of, is there some sort of need to get the connections, what's going to run from the back of the electric motor to connect to power up to the propeller? Was there a lot of sort of, did you have to get something tailor-made to make that all work?
They have a coupler that they actually provided with the electric motor kit. So the motors come mounted on a frame with the drives for the motors. Since they're a DC motor, it's got two black boxes on the side that can control the speed of the motor. And then the coupler, I measured the diameter of the prop shaft that we had, and then they machined to match that. And it's like two clamshell pieces that kind of clamp from the motor shaft to the prop shaft.
Okay. Yep. That's a word I was trying to think of. The coupler. I just didn't have it there in my memory. So that's interesting. So, at the end of the day, you've switched over. What's the verdict? I mean, you wouldn't have known what it was going to be like. I mean, to me, I think electric. I think the benefit is it's a hell of a lot quieter.
It is definitely.
Although you guys are sometimes having to run a generator to keep the batteries up. Is that right?
That's right, yep. And if we're going for a long day, we did, 70 miles the other day, and we ran the generator for probably 8 hours of the day. We were out for 12 total. So we don't have a very large battery bank compared to, some other yachts would have. We went with lithium batteries because of the rate of charging, and we're just so much lighter and easier to deal with getting into the boat in the situation we were at. And because they're so much more expensive, we didn't put as big of a battery bank as we probably could have done with the lead acid. Yeah.
So I read somewhere you've got some Torpedo batteries, and is it right? You've got about 200 amp hours that you can.
That's right.
You can run on. And how long will that give you? What sort of range or time does that give you at the moment? Because you said you were out for, what did you say the other day, 10 hours, and you needed to run the generator for 8? Is that what you said?
I think we did 12 that day, and we ran it for about 8. And if we don't have a lot of wind and current, that always affects how much resistance against the boat. And if we're motor sailing, we could usually not turn the generator on for the whole day. We just turn it on at night to cook dinner and charge up when we're cooking dinner for 2 hours. And when we're going shorter distances, when we're doing like 40 miles in a day, then that would be motor sailing. We'd probably go for 6-7 hours, and we're a slow boat. We don't go very fast, and that's we've kind of accepted that's how we travel now. Is we go with trying to conserve as many amp hours as possible and trying not to run the diesel. So, gosh, numbers wise, I would say we can go probably 4 or 5 hours on the batteries alone.
Yeah, that's great.
Before we drain down to a point where we're going to turn on the generator and charge back up.
And once we get solar panels, that'll change our time as well. We won't have to run the generator as much.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, normal. I mean, you're in a sort of you've been coming through some waterways and things where you sort of don't have options as far as getting the sails up and sort of tacking your way to get somewhere. So I imagine that you'll probably be really fine. I mean, you really just need a motor to get out of the marina and into the ocean, hoist the sails, and away you go. Am I right? Is that sort of part of
That's
the
right,
thing at the moment? Is you're not in the open water yet?
That's correct.
That is correct. And we've found that we can actually regenerate a little bit off of the propeller. The batteries can charge back up off of the drag from the propeller.
Is that right?
But
that's interesting.
The battery bank has to be down pretty low. Since the lithiums do have such a high voltage, they usually, I think, are at around 56 volts. And if they're down around 52 or 53 volts, I've seen current going back in. But when they're up pretty high, the motor just doesn't turn fast enough to make the voltage to charge.
Right. Oh, you just need to rig up the mountain bike.
Yeah.
So pros and cons I mentioned before. So the pros is it's quieter. What about cost-wise? I mean, did you at some point debate just replacing the diesel? And has that been a big cost difference? Is it apples with apples, or with the diesel? I'm thinking the diesel might have been cheaper.
If we would have gone with not with lithiums, it probably would have been pretty comparable in price to replacing the diesel with a new diesel. Since we had no core for the engine was completely gone, the block was cracked. I couldn't really get a rebuild for a reasonable price. Everybody wanted that core fee of $4,000. So that eliminated any rebuilt Perkins engine from our list. But the electric motor kit, I think, what was it? For the 20 kilowatt, we $8,500.
Yeah.
And then we bought a next-gen diesel generator, which is the small one, the 5.5 kilowatt I think we paid $7,000 for that. So we were getting, between the generator and the electric motor, it was pretty close to comparable, of a replacement new diesel engine.
Yeah.
For the quotes I had received, because I was getting quotes for replacement diesels before we came up with the electric solution, and they were all at least $13,000 for something similar to the Perkins. We looked at Volvo Penta and we looked at Nanny and a couple other ones, and 11 to 15,000 were the quotes I was getting back for an engine, and we couldn't get it into the boat in the spot we were at without taking a brand new engine apart in pieces and trying to carry it in.
They're not insignificant amounts of money, are they? Especially if you're sort of, if I'm imagining that you're sort of putting down the canal one day, and then that you hear that clonk from the engine room, perhaps immediately it doesn't sink in that's there's a $10,000 to $15,000 bill that you might not have anticipated.
Yeah, that was the most expensive miles we've covered on the trip.
Yeah.
Wow. Gee, that's. I guess everybody needs to have a little bit of sort of budget for repairs along the way. That's. Yeah. But anyway, going back to the question. So the cost-wise, not a big difference. You've been able to get to a point where you're sort of happy with the setup you've got now. Did it take much sort of, once you got it in, I mean, did you have to fine-tune anything, or was it just like plug and play? You just put it in, did the bolts up, and away you went?
Yeah, it was basically, I made some new motor mounts that went from the old ones for the Perkins, and it has adjustable feet, dropped right in, and aligned it with the prop shaft, and then hooked up the coupler and started making the terminations from the batteries then to the electric motor. And it came with all the kit that we had purchased from Electric Marina. Electric Yacht is the manufacturer of the kit. And it comes with all the fuses and the main on-off switches for it. And all I had to do was purchase the very large wire for the battery to the motor runs, and then connecting between the batteries in series and parallel to make our 48-volt bank.
No, that's great. I was just, earlier on, Karen, you mentioned that you were sort of under a bit of time pressure to get through the locks in, I think you were still in Canada at that stage. You said they were going to close them. What happens? Do they freeze?
Yeah, they close them for the winter. Get ready for that snow that's going to come. It's probably there right now.
Oh, wow. So there's a deadline if you're going to head down that way. So there's not any sort of commercial traffic then, because they can't run all winter. So it's just, is that right? I don't know. Is there like holiday cruises down through there? They looked pretty narrow. The pictures I looked at didn't look like there was a lot of room for overtaking going through the canals. Was that right? Was it just sort of people transitioning privately up and down there? I guess there wouldn't be any sort of commercial traffic.
No commercial traffic. It's all pleasure yacht. It used to be, back in the day, a huge commercial area, but yeah, now it's just pleasure craft, and it was very narrow. We had to float up next to several other boats, and it was kind of nerve-wracking because we're kind of like bumper boating in these canals, and then they open them up, and we opened into the small narrow rivers to the next canal. So, but everyone was very kind, and you just throw the ropes to each other and head on through. But yeah, there is a time frame, and there's also a time frame once you enter the locks. You have, I think, 4 hours to cover the entire distance of 13 locks.
Oh, that was the Chambly Canal. Yeah, that one they only did so many locks because we were at the end of the season and the water was low. They were only doing so many transits per day, and we were the slow boat of the group. They kind of stuck us all together with these power yachts, and we were holding them back, trying to do 5 knots. And
yeah, we started out with a diesel generator, a gas one on top of the boat, just to get us to the next marina so we could have our 5.5K diesel put into the boat with a crane. So we had to power on through with this really loud gas diesel generator on top of the deck of the boat. We're wearing ear muffs. We couldn't even hear each other talk. It was pretty funny. But yeah, we tried our best to keep up with those boats.
So the good news is it sounds like you got, I mean, all of that's behind you, really. I guess by the time we were talking earlier, you got as far as, let's say, New York, because that's easy for me to picture on a map. You've sort of solved all those problems by then, and you guys have pretty much been on your adventure with that behind you since then, because you sound like you're having a good time at the moment.
Yeah. It's the shakedown, I think, has been shook down.
I hope so. Knocking on wood.
Yeah. We only had to change one thing on the electric motor. We had the wrong size belts.
Pulleys and belts
pulleys, yeah.
It wasn't as efficient as it is now. So we had to change the propeller. We hauled out in Lake Champlain when we got to there and put the diesel generator in and changed the prop out also from a sailing style prop to more of it's a Michigan wheel DJX. It's similar to like a motor boat propeller. And we were not reaching the full RPMs for the electric motor. So changing the pulleys and belts out and match the electric motor better to the propeller.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was our last thing. I think we're good.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm looking at the map now. I'm just the one I think's on the last blog post. It's just got these great little green line of you heading down through Chesapeake, and it looks like you've been stopping here and going across to there and stopping here. It just looks like you're having a great adventure. And what's the big picture? What's the plan? Do you stop in Florida, or are you going on through? What's the plan?
We'll stop in Florida and figure out how we're going to stick solar panels on the boat somewhere, and then head for the Caribbean for a little bit, and then come back. Well, this little setback with the engine, we're going to go back to work for a couple months, and then we'll be cruising again, save up some more. And the plan was to take 5 whole years off, but we'll end up doing little bits of work in between when we have an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that sounds like a great way to do it. So you'll hit the Caribbean this summer? Is that your summer? No, you're heading into winter, my summer.
In the winter, yeah. So hopefully by January we'll be into the Caribbean and spend a few months and then head back to Florida and look for work for a little bit.
Cool. And remember I said that I looked at the map and I thought you were at the bottom of the Chesapeake. Are you still on the Intra-coastal Waterway? When you get to that bottom, I'm looking at the map of the Chesapeake, can you continue inland, or did you have to go out under that Chesapeake Bay Bridge and sail around to get back in? For something makes me think that you have to do a little bit out into the ocean. Have you had a bit of a taste of the boats in the ocean yet?
Yeah, we did. Actually, from New York City down to Cape May, we went on offshore off the coast of New Jersey, and spent 2 days doing that down to Cape May. So we did get a little bit offshore, and then now we've been inside for the rest of the trip south. Okay,
and how is that trip? I mean, I've heard a few people talking about it. Are you sort of enjoying it, or are you? Because it's such a long way. It's a whole coastline, and I guess of looking at riverbanks and things. Are you sort of enjoying it as you go along, or are you ready to get down into the tropics now?
I've been enjoying it. It is getting colder, but it's been beautiful. The Chesapeake was pretty amazing. We did get to do a lot of sailing in the Chesapeake. That's where the map on our blog shows the green line back and forth. We were sailing most of that, and it was just wonderful to actually use the boat as a sailboat again.
No, that's great. Sorry, Karen, were you going to say something?
Yeah, as we're sailing, and I've been trying to keep up with the blog and educating myself along the way is like a history lesson of our American history and what's going on and what has happened and
Canadian history. We didn't know much about Canada, and being stuck there for a month and a half, we almost started speaking French in Quebec.
yeah, that's compulsory language training. What immersion? Compulsory immersion in the language. Best way to learn, isn't it?
It was,
yeah. So that's been wonderful. There's always some lull times where you're just kind of watching things go by, but. It's been really interesting to see the world from this perspective. I've always lived on land, and so now that we're sailing down and seeing where these little towns are that I would have never gone to, so that's been really, really interesting and fun.
Oh, and the pace isn't too different from how we've traveled before. We did some really big bicycle touring trips in between our stints in Antarctica. And we're probably going faster than we did on our bicycles. So this is not having to work, and our stuff is carried for us has been great.
Yeah, that's right. You got this floating home, like a caravan with everything along and the comforts of home. And no, that sounds terrific. Like I say, at the start, I think it's a wonderful trip, and probably, I'm imagining, speaking hypothetically, a really nice way to get to know your boat, to get to know life aboard, and you're sort of just working your way down through these inland waterways. I couldn't think of a better way to sort of start a journey. I mean, you guys have gone from sort of nothing to live aboard. Like, I think I wrote down somewhere, you'd only, is it true, you maybe bought your boat, it's maybe May this year?
Yeah, May 31st is when we signed the papers.
Yeah, we're newbies.
Yeah, but I think that's good. I mean, I think you've timed, I think I like that timing. It's like, buy the boat when you're ready to go, get aboard and get going. You know, I think I've chatted with other people about how easy it is to sort of have a boat just stuck in a harbour and always saying you're going to go. You guys, congratulations. You've sort of had your plan and you've stuck to it. You've got yourself moving. Terrific that you can get, potentially pick up some work in between your sailing trips. Like you said, you might have to just drop back into Florida, but I don't know if you caught the last interview I did was with the crew from Sail Surf Rome, and same sort of thing. They've managed to sort of live a lifestyle where they can sort of get back to work and just fill up the cruising kitty here and there. So if you've got opportunity to do that, that's great. Yeah.
That will be the plan, hopefully.
Now, we've mentioned your blog a couple of times. Now, it's the Odyssey of Minke.blogspot.com. I'll put some links on my website for it. Probably if people just Google even the Odyssey of Minke, it'll come up, I'd guess. And like I say, it's perfect to sort of document it. I mean, people can go back like I did and just sort of start from the beginning of the journey and sort of work their way down, and lots of pretty photos of the boat traveling down. I think it'll sort of inspire a few people to follow along, and I'll put links on the sailing podcast for that. Thanks for sort of sharing the story. It was really interesting about about your past history and about why you chose the steel yacht, and obviously about the electric yachts. What do you think, if people wanted to contact you and sort of discuss a little bit more in depth? Because when I looked on the site, I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying there wasn't a super amount of detail about gearing up for the electric motor. But if people have got questions, can they sort of contact you through the blog there?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, I think it'd be good because you've sort of been through that experience. It's eventually everybody's got to replace that diesel motor, and people really could sort of think twice about kitting up with electric and maybe just helping the environment just that little bit.
Yeah, that would be great.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Karen. Thanks for the chat. And I'll keep track of your travels, and I hope you have a great time. Once you hit the Bahamas, you can sit down there and have a beer for me.
All right.
Okay, great. It was great talking with you, David.
Good. Thanks, you guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thanks again, Karen and Dan. Just had a quick look at the blog. It looks like you're already progressing well down the coast. It says you're in McClellanville, South Carolina, heading down to Jacksonville, Florida. If anybody would like to check out their blog, it's the Odyssey of Minke.blogspot.com. And of course, I'll post a link to their blog, make it a bit easier to find. If you go to thesailingpodcast.com/70 for episode 70, and along with my show notes, you'll be able to find your way to the Odyssey of Minke. I also wanted to say a quick thank you to Doug for signing up as a patron on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show, please just go and visit my site on Patreon. It's patreon.com/sailing. You can sign up and just make a donation to help support the show. Now, thanks for listening. I hope you have a great day, and thank you for joining us on our journey. You've been listening to David and Karina Anderson of the Sailing Podcast.